occurrence of money when people are fortunate have a lot of it, and the more that you do, you seem as a local because you go to your favorite spots are more than likely to get handouts. This is also the case in places of first class on airplanes, or venues you go to have free stuff for people at venues all the time if you're in a green room. When you're less fortunate, you have lower end jobs and you lack experience. But if those lower end jobs paid more money, people would be more willing to try a hand at being experienced, and that would give a flavorful batch. The makeup of stuff when it's channeled wrong. How psychologists, there's so many of them, and I think that is a problem because they're giving solutions to people who have nothing to do with just having a talk to, and when it doesn't work, it leads to a media, getting a payday off of a court case. Now, if you're not paying attention to any of that, that's great, because a lot of people stopped watching the TV. So a lot of people not watching TV is one of the keys, and the second one is understanding anatomy. And how much of anatomy does it mean for a barcode to have ostensibly like a chromosome feature? So our features of chromosomes are strong, and the permeability of things are incorporated within cell membranes. The moment of cell membranes being weakened is a sure sign, because if they're all together in one giant gauge, is a sure sign if it's weak. And perhaps that's the key that psychologists are trying to enact, is how strong cell membranes all together as one is a shape. You know how they have you do shapes of like art where you draw something and then pull it out and pull it together. You say, what do you see of this picture? I think that's what they're trying to describe, just in different forms of cell membranes, or it could be lymph nodes, or stuff around your neck that are glands. So I'm going to talk about cells today because it's so interesting that they are the crossroads of mechanical and digital. What I mean by this is electricity is eccentric. We're electrochemical beings. It's not a selling point, it's a fact. Also, it's like we're plants, but we don't need to get soiled into the ground to have livelihood. Plants, when they're growing, they've got roots, and the roots can have different shapes as they grow. It is similar to our stomachs, how there's always digestion in it, even as a little tiny fetus or a zygote. Ever since then, there's always food in your stomach digesting, and when there isn't, your stomach starts to eat itself as your muscle tissue starts to eat the fat around it. That's just how like a flower, when it's getting dried up, its root system will churn different colors and probably curl. Interesting how that's similar to your stomach and muscles curling when they're emptying. But if you're getting hungry,
So when geometry, it's so great because within intuition, there's like this gut instinct that people have. That's their intuition. But then it combines the logic. So if you didn't know so, it's like this giant ball. If it had hair all combed over, there's always going to be one hair sticking up. And that's a real thing. So if we're comparing, what that means is it sticking up on the inside of the ball, that would be my eye floater. So subjectively, that's the quarry I'm in. Okay, so let's sum up a few things. When you're living a reality, you've got your taste, smell, sensibility, those two things. Let's hit the brakes for 1 minute, pump them. We've got our smell and our taste. Did you know if you're plugging your nose or if it's runny, guilty, that your taste buds are not as equipped as they would be if your nose wasn't? Pump the brakes again. People who have had their taste buds damaged have sensory of things that aren't, because they think that their brain's wired to have it actually be so. And now this is getting really poetic, so let's just cut to the chase that when you're cutting melon and you've been hit with a bioweapon, that melon will not only smell metallic but taste metallic in some cases. No, not all the cases, thank God, because everyone's made different. And the more flavorful people are, is the more they're willing to try. That was whole Andrew Zimmerman's entire showcase of his career, was that people love eating different food, and that's what makes us unique. He made bank off that. The taste, if everyone's having the same taste, it's gonna be bad because reality will be shortened. So if there's an off-ramp to reality being shortened, it's knowing h-bar. That's a Planck length. It's a constant, where at that small scale, reality in that small tiny bit, there's some quirky things that happen. And knowing these quirky things are, of course, going to allow for everyone to remain more unique the more that they're tapping into it. And how can that occur? Well, through understanding what's hardwired and the, what did I say earlier? It's so funny how tuned people are. I always say, forgot my camera phone, or I don't have a phone, it's just a regular camera, but I call it a camera phone. And so I woke up this morning with the Project Pat. He's a rapper, he's got this song, Never Be a G, and his chorus is saying that no one's ever going to be a G. And so subjectively, the most G thing I can think of is knowing chemistry over an entire land and knowing where good stuff is and showing where bad stuff is. And the silver lining is great because there's silver linings on everything. And knowing what parts of land have these slivers of things that are good and enriched, bringing that to the forefront so you can showcase how companies make their dollars, and knowing the most complex nature in that, the thing that they're most proud of, and bashing those two together to see their mission statement. Combine all these together, and that was G as AF. Okay, so we were talking about hairball theorem. Imagine how igloos are made. It's oddly similar because you have a circular object. It uses the ground as opposite to the top keystone in order to make a solid state structure. Now this is important because when making an igloo, you put in the keystone last to make everything set in and pushing off each other just right. So, if we're taking a hairball theorem and an igloo together, it's one step closer to knowing how to get something that's inside of the encapsulation manipulated outside of the encapsulation without breaking the seal. That's what I'm trying to describe as fine tuning and hard wiring. And there's always this great way of achieving putting in hard work, and it's with how complex the hard work can get, the fruits of labor would bear. It's like good trees only bear good fruit, bad trees would bear bad fruit, and cut it off from the creator would be things that are of bad people's intuition. So what a gut instinct would read is not being part, selling out to a withered branch. And it's just dissatisfying when people are retiring from doing X amount of dirt. And the complexion of bacteria is like God chose how to nitpick these solid state structures of different bacteria, so some can be good and bad. And the gut lining of, if you do a whole bunch of gross stuff, is going to make, therefore, you to be less vulnerable to things that are disgusting. And so the escape hatch for people who are fortunate is working from home. And then that's disgusting because it isn't actually making a difference in the world working from home. But what about the less fortunate people when there's something sweeping across the land and everyone's freaking out? You know what they did on the Titanic? They said, we'll wait for the lifeboats when they come back for us. This was the people in third class. That never happened.